Alright, so we established that just about all iTwin platform APIs will require an authorization header with an access token. And access tokens are issued when a user signs in. Remember that little pop-up that appeared in the Try It Now modal? Behind the scenes, it was signing me in and acquiring an access token. So this lesson will cover how that can be accomplished in your apps. We will develop sign-in functionality to acquire an access token that can then later be used in an authorization header. Or, thinking back to the hotel analogy, we need to issue our guests a hotel key card that will grant them access to areas of the hotel that they're going to need. The good news is the iTwin Viewer Create React App template handles a lot of this out of the box. If you're unfamiliar with the iTwin Viewer CRA template, I've added a link in the description to some resources. So here I have run the Create React App command and have this app started. All I had to do was come into the .env and set the appropriate environment variables. So now this app is running, it's prompting me to sign in. Now when it's signing in, just as it did on the Try It Now button, in the background it's signing me in with the authorization server and it's getting me an access token. In the code, the iTwin Viewer has a use access token hook to manage the access token. And this access token is what we're going to be using for the rest of the course to make iTwin platform requests. So if you're planning on developing an app based on the iTwin Viewer template, this is all you really need. Simply adjust the scopes in your .env file with the scopes to the iTwin platform APIs you plan to use. But if you intend to start your app from scratch, or you're going to add iTwin platform functionality to an existing app, or you just want to learn more, I'm going to take you on a little tour of the relevant iTwin Viewer code that does the sign-in. So for demo purposes, I'm going to start with a completely blank Create React App. I ran npx Create React App, the name I chose was my blank app, and the template was TypeScript. And I'm going to copy over some of the key functionality in the iTwin Viewer template to this blank Create React App. So there are three key pieces of code in the iTwin Viewer that we're going to need to replicate in our code. The first is creating and configuring a browser auth client. Then we're going to use that auth client to sign in. And finally, we're going to have to handle the redirection. So in the OAuth protocol, after a user authorizes an application, the authorization server will redirect the user back to our application, where we're going to need to handle that redirection gracefully. So for piece number one, we're going to need to install two packages, iTwin Browser Authorization and iTwin Core Bentley. Browser Authorization obviously helps with authorization through the browser, and Core Bentley contains the typings for the Browser Authorization package. So now that they're installed, we're going to do step one, create and configure a browser auth client. So I'm looking at my default iTwin Viewer from the Create React App iTwin Viewer, and I see that they have an auth client that they instantiate using useMemo, and I'm going to do the exact same thing in my blank app. Just paste it in, and let's go ahead and fix the imports. Now this app is just for demo purposes, so instead of using these environment variables, I'm just going to hard code all my values. Alright, so that's step one. We created and configured a browser auth client. Now we're going to use that browser auth client to sign in. So looking back at the default iTwin Viewer that I made, I see that they log in using a callback and a use effect. So I'm just going to gain some inspiration from this and copy it over to my blank app. Like that. Fix the imports again. So I can see that they have a use effect that is going to be called on initial app load, and it calls this login function, which is a callback, and it does two things. First, it tries to sign in silent, and what that will basically do is look for the user's session in storage. But if that fails, then they will prompt for a full sign-in to sign the user in. So now that I have piece 1 and piece 2 replicated in my blank app, I just need to go ahead and handle the redirection. So the redirect URI is very important. In OAuth, after a user signs in, the authorization server will redirect the user back to our app. And so in index.tsx is where we're going to handle this. So here I have the default iTwin Viewer template, and they use a browser authorization callback handler that will handle the sign in callback. and this only happens if the window.location equals the redirect URL. So let's do the same in our app. So here in my blank app, I use the same if statement, where if window.location is our redirect URL, then we're going to handle the callback using the authorization callback handler. Otherwise, we're just going to render our app normally. So now that I have all three pieces set up, I'm going to make a member state variable called access token that will hold our user's access token. So like that. And then down in the sign-in section is where I'm going to actually set that, where I will use the auth client to get the access token, and then I will set access token like that. And now down in my render, I will give the user a little feedback where I'll say if access token, if the user is signed in. Let's just go ahead and give a little feedback, a paragraph that says you're signed in. That. So let's start this app up. Okay, and under this giant header, I see my feedback that you are signed in. That is exactly what I wanted to see. So I have an access token that is capable of making iTwin platform requests. Or if this was a hotel, my key has just been issued and I can begin accessing areas of the iTwin hotel. So for the next few videos, I will be using this access token to make iTwin platform calls using various methods. And the first method will be a very direct and very basic fetch method.